Kentucky Senator and 2016 Republican presidential candidate Rand Paul posted this video online Tuesday showing what he would do to the U.S. tax code. Senator, a chainsaw, a wood chipper, and fire. Is that what it takes these days to get attention away from Donald Trump?
Well, I think my favorite had to be the chainsaw. And, we have a 70,000-page tax code, and I think it's chasing American jobs overseas, chasing American companies overseas. Last year we had Burger King reincorporate in Canada. Canada's tax rate's half our tax rate. So yeah, I think a lot of people would like to kill the tax code. And you know how it is. A lot of young people don't watch the news anymore. We wanted to give them something with a little bit of entertainment value, so maybe they'd spread it around to their friends.
Lindsey Graham smashed his phone. Rick Perry said Donald Trump was a cancer. Lindsey Graham also called Donald Trump a jackass. Are these the things Republican candidates have to do these days to take attention away from a guy who seems to be consuming all the news?
I think there's plenty of time for all of us. There are a lot of candidates. I think in my case, it's a little bit easier to stand out because we have some distinctive ideas. I'm the one who's been championing the right to privacy, saying the NSA went too far. And really, I think among Republicans, I'm one of the few who thinks that we shouldn't be turning over all of our records to the government. I'm for a dramatic reduction in taxes, a dramatically simpler tax code. So I don't know, I think it's a little bit easier for some to stand out than others. And I think there'll be plenty of time for us to stand out over time.
I notice you haven't used Donald Trump's name yet.
I got more important things to talk about. I've got a whole platform that I've spent years developing, and we're going to continuing to emphasize what we're for rather than what we're against.
Senator, I want to talk about the Iran nuclear deal. You have a history of downplaying the threat from Iran. Right now, though, you oppose this deal, you say. Why is that?
I've always been in favor of negotiations as opposed to war, if those are our choices. I think negotiation is better. I was glad that the sanctions brought us this far. I did vote for the sanctions against Iran, and I was glad that we brought them to the negotiating table. But I think that we need to negotiate from a position of strength. And I think Iran's history of duplicity, Iran's history of not adhering to international agreements, and their history of gamesmanship when it comes to international agreements should have allowed us to know that maybe we should have released the sanctions in a gradual fashion or a stepwise fashion and shown consistent compliance over a longer period of time. Now, we're going to show initial compliance, but then the wording of the agreement says that we will simultaneously then release the vast majority of the sanctions. President Obama says we could snap them back on, but there's also some concern that any deals that are made during the time period in which the sanctions are not in place cannot have sanctions placed on them. And that's one of the discussion points that we're starting to have now, is that replacing sanctions if Iran is not compliant will be very difficult. So for that constellation of reasons, I end up saying, you know what, I would have continued the interim agreement, but I would have tried to get a better deal than what we ended up getting.
In 2008, you said Iran's not a national security threat. Do you think they are a national security threat today?
I think they've become more of a nuclear threat over time. If you go back to 2007, 2008 period, there were probably 80% less centrifuges than we have today. So they have definitely become more of a threat as they've developed more of a uranium stockpile, but also as they've developed a greater capacity for enrichment. So I don't think anybody would question the fact that Iran probably is more of a threat now than they were previously.
Senator, I know you don't love to talk about polls, but they are the metric that's being used to figure out who's going to be on the debate stage. The latest national poll of Republicans puts you at 6% earlier in the week. On May 31st, you were at 11%. That's almost a double drop. How do you explain that?
One of the interesting things about polls is that if you show me head-to-head with Hillary Clinton, we're the only one that leads her in 5 states. We lead Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Colorado, Iowa, and New Hampshire, all states won by President Obama. So I kind of think it depends on which polls you look at. If you look at the polling of me versus Hillary Clinton, it's very encouraging for us. If you look at the Real Clear Politics average of all the polls, we've consistently been in the top tier, and we feel for right now that's a good place to be.
Senator, how does this campaign play out? What happens in November 2016?
I wish I knew. I wish I had a crystal ball. It'd save me a lot of grief, wouldn't it, if I knew who was going to win now? I think it's going to be different than any we've ever seen. I don't think we've ever had 15, maybe 16 candidates, most of whom have actually won a statewide office. And so I think it'll be a very interesting campaign. It could go on longer than many people have seen in the past. And I don't think anyone is inevitable. I think even those who have raised hundreds of billions of dollars already, or hundreds of millions of dollars, sorry, I don't think any of them have made themselves inevitable. I think there will be very much a contested primary, and we'll know more next year, February, March.
Are you talking about Jeb Bush?
Well, yeah, he's raised a lot of money, but I don't think he's been able to make himself inevitable. I think when his brother raised a bunch of money in 2000, there's a certain inevitability. I don't sense that, and I think the numbers for Jeb Bush aren't such that if I were his team, I'd be jumping up and down and saying, hey, this is going to be a cakewalk. I think it'll be very, very contested. I'm happy about that we have a position for those who are part of the liberty movement, those who want privacy, those who want criminal justice reform, and those who think we should not spend money we don't have, even for a good purpose. We shouldn't be borrowing money at this point. I think that we have a significant constituency, and we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Jeb Bush has raised this extraordinary amount of money. You don't love the fundraising process. Why is that?
I'm not sure anybody really does. I think asking people for money, I'd rather talk about the ideas of how we'd fix the country than ask people for money. But we've actually been pretty lucky in the sense that most of our money comes from online fundraising from small donors. When I ran for the Senate, I had one gentleman gave me $13.66 every 2 weeks for about 2 years. I mean, he ended up having a pretty significant donation a little bit at a time. So we have a lot of smaller donors, and it allows us to go on in a way that others don't.
Senator Paul, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.